I woke up on my birthday feeling a strange heaviness in the air, like a storm was brewing inside the house. It wasn't just the ache in my worn-out knees. It was a gut feeling that something was about to snap. I dragged myself to the window, staring at a gray, indifferent sky. Today, the silence in this house wasn't just quiet, it was a weapon. "Happy birthday, Vivian," I whispered to myself, because ever since my husband passed away, no one said those words to me with any real warmth anymore. I naively thought that maybe today would be different, that my son Richard would remember, that Courtney, my daughter-in-law, would at least fake a kind gesture. But the house remained as cold and silent as always. I walked to the kitchen to make my own breakfast, just like I did every morning. The smell of fresh coffee gave me a little comfort, and while I was stirring in the sugar, I heard Courtney's footsteps coming down the stairs. I watched her out of the corner of my eye, immaculate, perfumed, phone glued to her hand, more worried about her social media feed than the woman who helped raise her own husband. She didn't greet me. Not a word. Not even a glance. And yet, like a fool, I kept waiting. Maybe later. Maybe when Richard woke up. Maybe. But no. Silence was the first gift I received that day. I tried to distract myself by cleaning, organizing, folding laundry. I had a habit of keeping my hands busy when my chest felt tight with pain. Mid-morning, while I was dusting the sideboard, a notification popped up on my cell phone. A text from a neighbor. "Did you see what they posted about you, Mrs. Vivian?" I froze. I opened Facebook with my heart pounding in my temples. And there it was. A photo of me, taken secretly. While I was napping in the living room armchair a few days ago, the lighting was unflattering, mouth slightly open, gray hair messy, and right above it, the caption written by my own daughter-in-law. "Cheers to this old hag who only knows how to sleep and take pills." I felt like someone had dumped a bucket of ice water over me. My cheeks burned. My hands were shaking. For a second, I thought I was going to pass out. Courtney was just a few feet away, still giggling while replying to comments. And I pressed the phone against my chest so I wouldn't cry out loud. But before we continue, I want to extend a very special invitation to you. Subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. This helps me see that you support me and enjoy my stories. And comment down below which city you are watching us from. Now, let's continue. I took a deep breath, trying to swallow the humiliation that was swarming inside me like a hive of bees. I couldn't believe that Courtney, the woman I had welcomed with open arms, fed at my table, and cared for when she was sick, had the cruelty to expose me like that, just so her friends could have a laugh. Her mockery didn't hurt because of what she said, but because of what it proved. That in this house, I was no longer a person, but a burden, an old piece of furniture, a shadow taking up space. I closed my phone slowly and set it on the counter. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me wounded. Sometimes, silence is the only armor left for a woman who has been too good her whole life. I spent the rest of the morning acting as if nothing had happened. I prepped lunch. I watered the plants. I folded tablecloths. I moved with the calm of someone who is thinking very deeply, as if every step was a piece on a chessboard. I had been publicly humiliated, yes, but what Courtney didn't know is that my patience wasn't weakness. It was memory. And I knew very well how to store the things done to me. Blows that aren't physical still leave marks on the soul. Richard arrived at noon, frowning as always, focused on his work without looking up when he entered. I served him lunch. He gave me a mechanical, "Thanks," devoid of emotion. I wanted to hug him, tell him it was my birthday, that even though he was a grown man, he was still my baby. But I stayed quiet. The silence hurt more than any insult. And still, I kept clearing the table, saving my tears for when I was alone. In the afternoon, Courtney went out shopping, and I took the chance to sit for a moment on the back porch. The fresh air hit my face like a reminder. I am still alive. I still feel. I still think. And I can still defend myself. I closed my eyes and listened to my breathing. I wasn't going to cry. Not today. Not for her. Every offense, every sneer, every look over the shoulder was forming a seed inside me. And seeds, when they hurt, grow strong. When Courtney returned, I didn't even try to look at her. She walked past me as if I didn't exist, went up to her room, left her shopping bags on the table, and locked herself in. I cleaned up everything in silence. And that was when, with the house lights dimmed low, with my dignity still trembling but standing firm, something inside me clicked. Maybe it was the loneliness. Maybe the humiliation. Maybe because it was simply time. But that day, I decided my silence had ended. Night fell slowly, covering the house like a veil. I went to bed early, staring at the ceiling without really sleeping. I didn't feel fear. I felt something different, a mix of clarity and calm. And while I listened to Courtney's footsteps in the hallway, the giggles she made while scrolling on her phone, an idea took shape in my mind. A sharp, precise, almost perfect idea. The next day, Courtney came downstairs early, half asleep, hair in a messy bun and in a terrible mood. As always. I was already up making coffee. She grabbed her favorite mug, the white one with pink flowers, and took it to the sink to fill it. In that moment, my heart skipped a beat. I knew what was about to happen. I had planned it with patience. And when she saw what was inside the mug, her scream echoed through the entire house. Courtney's scream was still bouncing off the walls when I sat down at the dining table with a calmness I didn't know I possessed. She was still in the kitchen, hyperventilating, muttering curses under her breath while checking the mug over and over, as if the object could explain why that thing was there. I didn't look at her, but I heard her every move. It was curious. A single scare had achieved what my years of silence never could, making her realize that I exist. I sat there observing my hands on the table. Wrinkled hands, full of age spots, but strong. These hands had built a rural schoolhouse. They had cradled my children. They had held my husband until his last breath. Hands I thought were useless now, until today, because those same hands had placed something inside that mug she would never have imagined finding, a printed photograph of her own private chat, the conversation where she wrote that I was a useless waste of space, and where she mocked my birthday with a vomit emoji. The same conversation she had with a friend, unaware that I was in the hallway listening to every word. I made no noise, not a sigh. I didn't say a single, why. I didn't cry. I didn't ask for explanations. I just kept silence. The silence. My weapon, my coat, my refuge. Sometimes I wonder when I learned to shut up. I think it was the moment life became bigger than my strength. During my years as a school teacher, I used to spend hours listening to children who came with heartbreaking stories. Drunk fathers, absent mothers, bruises hidden under long sleeves. I listened to them. I was a wall. And maybe that's why I got too used to listening without speaking. When my husband was alive, my silence was something else. It was companionship. He understood my pauses, my sighs, my looks. But when he died, my silence stopped being attended to, and it became invisibility. I moved in with Richard because the old house felt too big and too empty. I thought my presence would be welcome, that I would be the loving grandma, the kind mother-in-law, the mother who would offer tenderness. I never imagined I would become a burden. While Courtney stood petrified in front of the mug, I remembered the first time she walked into my home. She was pretty, She always was. Clear skin, expressive eyes, perfect smile. But behind that smile was something no one saw. I don't know how to explain it, but some people smell like danger even before they show their teeth. And from that day, I knew my place in this house would be relegated to a corner. Like a broken chair no one dares to throw out, but no one wants to fix either. I tried so hard to make her like me. I cooked her favorite meals. I gave her a hand-knitted shawl. I tried not to meddle in anything. But for her, my simple existence was already a nuisance. Sometimes, when she thought I wasn't listening, she would tell Richard, "Your mom needs to go to a home. She's just in the way here." And Richard, my son, said nothing. He stayed quiet, just like me. The silence of others is the one that hurts the most. While Courtney was still trembling in the kitchen, because she knew perfectly well what was inside the mug and what it meant, I got up slowly and walked to the big window. The sunlight was starting to pour in. Soft, warm, as if the day had no idea of the emotional hell that had occurred hours before. The birds were singing, the leaves of the orange tree moved with the wind, and for a moment I felt a peace so deep it almost embarrassed me. Was I really calm? Was I, the woman who had let herself be walked all over for years, finding solace after a public humiliation? The answer, though hard to accept, was yes. The calm didn't come from suffering, but from the certainty that something had changed inside me. As if Courtney's cruel post had broken the last piece of useless silence I had left. I wasn't the one who started the war, but I would be the one to finish it, I remembered my mother. A tiny woman, but with a gaze that could split anyone's arrogance in two. She always said, "Silence doesn't make you weak, daughter. It makes you dangerous. People never know what you're thinking." Sometimes I underestimated her. Sometimes I imagined she was exaggerating. But now I understood she was right. Silence wasn't submission. It was strategy. When Courtney dropped the mug into the sink with a crash, I didn't move. She came into the dining room, pale, breathing shallowly. "Did you put that there?" I looked at her without rushing, holding on to my calm as if it were a delicate tablecloth. "What thing?" I replied. She opened and closed her mouth, shaking. She couldn't say it. She couldn't pronounce the words. My private conversation, my mockery, my betrayal. Because acknowledging it would be accepting she wasn't the victim, but the aggressor. I observed her like I had never looked at her before, with clarity. For the first time, I didn't feel fear or pity or rage. I felt power. Not that dirty power many use to crush others, but a quiet, clean power, like that of a woman who finally decides to defend her dignity. Courtney stepped back. I have to check something." She ran to her room, and I, without hurrying, returned to my chair. I took my coffee mug, savored the first sip, and smiled. My silence had ended. My story was just beginning. Courtney spent the whole day locked in her room. I heard her pacing from one side to the other, opening drawers, closing the bathroom door, talking to herself nervously. Her fear was so evident it seemed to have become another entity in the house, breathing between the walls, watching from every corner. I continued with my routine as if nothing had happened. I swept the porch, folded sheets, made soup. But inside I felt my eyes had opened for the first time in years. The fear Courtney showed didn't come from the shock of the photograph in her mug. No, it was something deeper, heavier, darker. She didn't fear the image, she feared what the image revealed, that she no longer had control over me, that the woman she thought was weak, moldable, insignificant, was no longer playing on her board. And people like Courtney can't stand losing control over anything. In the afternoon, when Richard came back from work, the house held a strange silence. Courtney didn't come down to greet him. He left his briefcase on the sofa and looked at me. "Everything okay, Mom?" he asked with that quick, almost automatic tone. Everything's normal, son, I replied with a small smile. I wasn't going to be the one to stir up the conflict. After all, I had learned that the truth, when left to breathe on its own, always ends up revealing itself. Richard ate in silence. Every so often he looked at the stairs, waiting for Courtney to come down, but she didn't. The tension floated so thick it could be cut like a sheet of wet paper. And silence once again became my ally. I said nothing. I asked nothing. I just watched. Sometimes observation is more powerful than confrontation. That night, while I was cleaning the kitchen, I heard the sound of a door slamming shut. Courtney came down the stairs with hurried, almost choked steps. She was crying. With her eyes swollen and her breathing agitated, she looked like a child caught stealing candy. Richard stood up immediately. "What happened, babe?" She hugged him as if the world were about to collapse. "I need to talk to you. Upstairs," she said, swallowing her words. They went up without looking at me. I turned off the dining room light, left the dishes drying, and went to my room. But I didn't sleep because while they talked, their voices came muffled through the walls. I couldn't distinguish every phrase, but I could hear the emotions, reproaches, stifled screams, excuses, lies, fear, a lot of fear. Past midnight, Courtney's footsteps came down the stairs. She was walking slower than before, as if she were carrying the weight of a newly discovered secret, a secret that probably she had tried to hide for too long. I cracked my bedroom door open, barely breathing. Courtney crossed the hallway with her phone in her hand, looking at it over and over as if that device were threatening her. And then I heard her mutter something that froze me. "It has to have been him. Someone else knows. Someone else knows." I closed the door softly. I didn't need more to confirm what I already intuited. Courtney's cruelty came from a place much deeper than simple contempt for me. It comes from fear. And no one is afraid without a reason. The next morning, Richard left early for work. Courtney came down an hour later, haggard, gaunt. She walked straight to the kitchen but avoided looking at me. She looked for her favorite mug, the white one with pink flowers, and stopped. She looked at it again as if she feared finding another secret at the bottom. I was sitting there drinking my coffee, in silence. She took a deep breath and grabbed a different mug. "Did you sleep well?" I asked with a kindness so soft it made her tremble. "Yes," she replied, not daring to hold my gaze. The silence settled between us again, a silence that said much more than either of us wanted to admit. While she was looking for milk in the refrigerator, her phone vibrated on the table. I didn't move, but my eyesight caught the screen, an incoming message, an unknown name. "Did you tell him anything? This cannot come to light." Courtney spun around so fast she almost dropped the milk. She grabbed the phone as if it were a weapon. "Don't look at my things," she said with a shaky voice. "I haven't looked at anything," I replied, and it was true. I didn't need to look. Listening and observing was enough. Courtney went up to her room without drinking her coffee, and I felt like I had just seen the missing piece of the puzzle. For the rest of the day, I stuck to my business. But while I mopped the floor, while I arranged the clothes, while I watered the plants, I was threading together every detail, every gesture, every jump scare. Courtney didn't fear the photo in the cup. She feared something else coming to light, something that must be serious, maybe illegal, maybe morally unforgivable, something that made her look at her phone like it was a bomb about to explode. That night, when I thought everyone was sleeping, I went to the hallway to turn off the lights. And then I heard a sound, a whisper, a phrase. Courtney was talking on the phone in her room. The door was ajar. I didn't want to listen. But destiny doesn't always ask. "I can't go on like this," she was saying with a broken voice. "If he finds out, He's going to kill me. And if Richard discovers it, it's all over. There was a silence. Courtney sobbed. I already deleted what I could, but someone else has the messages. Someone else saw. Another silence. Yes, the old lady, I'm sure. She knows something. My skin prickled. My heart, however, did not. My heart was already prepared. I turned off the light, went into my room, and sat on the bed. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just breathed, deeply. The woman who stays quiet. The woman who observes. The woman who endures. Now, the woman who knows. And what I knew that night would change the course of my entire life. Courtney didn't come down for dinner. She didn't come down for water, nor to look for her phone charger, which she always left lying in the living room. I heard her walking above my room until past midnight. It was a nervous pace, irregular, as if she were carrying a guilt she didn't know where to put. And I went to bed early, not because I was tired, but because I needed to think clearly. The conversation I heard the night before wouldn't leave me alone. There was a hidden truth in this house, a truth Courtney had been hiding for a long time, something she was terrified Richard would discover. Or worse, something that could destroy him. At 6 a.m, when the first rays of sun entered my window, I was already dressed. I made coffee as always, with the same routine I had been repeating for years. But that day, every movement had a purpose, an intention. Today, I wasn't going to wait. Today, I was going to put one more piece on the table, one that Courtney couldn't ignore. While the coffee bubbled, I went down to the living room and took a second printout of the conversation I had found in the cup the day before. It wasn't the only copy I had made. Experience teaches that truths are kept, duplicated, and protected. I went back to the kitchen just as I heard Courtney's footsteps coming down the stairs. They were slow, dragging steps. It seemed like every step weighed on her like guilt. She entered without greeting. Her hair was tied back clumsily and her eyes were puffy. She approached the sink. She took a mug, the white one with pink flowers, her favorite, the same one that the day before had made her scream. She held it in the air for a few seconds. She turned it. She examined it. She flipped it over as if fearing something would jump out of it. And then, finally, she dared to fill it with coffee. I watched everything from the table, without saying a word. That is the advantage of silence. It takes no effort to make it heavy. Courtney brought the mug to her lips, but before drinking, she set it on the table and stopped. She looked at me. Her eyes were full of suspicion. Did you see my mug yesterday before I came down? She asked with a tense voice. I don't recall, I replied softly, stirring my coffee. Maybe yes, maybe no. I'm very distracted lately. My answer, which seemed innocent, was like a lit match in a room full of gasoline. Courtney pressed her lips together tightly. She took a breath and took a sip, a trembling sip. The mug had nothing in it this time, but her fear was already served. When Richard came down, everything seemed to be in order. Courtney even tried to smile, though the corner of her mouth twitched like a loose wire. He kissed her on the cheek and left for work without noticing anything out of place. But I did. I saw it all. At noon, when the house fell silent, Courtney came down with her phone in hand. She walked cautiously, as if afraid the walls were listening. She stopped in the dining room and checked a box where she kept old documents. Then she checked under the sofa. She pushed furniture, opened drawers. She was looking for something. She was looking for who was watching her. I watched her from the kitchen door. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did, but preferred to pretend she didn't. That was Courtney's dilemma. She could humiliate, but she couldn't face someone who didn't flinch. After almost 30 minutes of frantic searching, she went up the stairs abruptly and slammed the door shut. The house returned to calm, a tense, alive, electric calm. Then I knew it was time. I went to my room. I opened the drawer where I kept my old notebooks, and I took out a small metal box. In it, besides old photographs and letters from my husband, were printed copies of things I had been discovering for months, receipts that didn't match, cash payments Courtney made, messages that arrived in the early morning, and now, that conversation where she talked to her friend about selling the estate behind Richard's back. I went back to the dining room. I left a copy of one of the messages. Not the worst one, just one sufficient to unsettle her, under Courtney's mug. I placed it naturally, as if it were part of the tablecloth, and I waited. At 4 p.m, Courtney came down. Her face was different, defeated, as if she had cried for hours. She approached her chair, and there she saw it, a folded paper. She took it with the tips of her fingers, fearing what she would find. She opened it slowly, and the expression on her face changed completely. First surprise, then fear, then a pure, silent terror that stole her breath. In that conversation, which she recognized instantly, it said, "Richard can never find out what we did with the money. If he finds out, he'll kill me. He'll kill me. No one can know, not even the old lady." I said nothing. I didn't move a muscle. I just took a sip of my tea. Courtney looked up at me. Her lips were trembling. She was pale as a sheet. Where did you get this?" she asked with a broken voice. "Is that yours?" I replied, arching an eyebrow. "Yes. I mean, no. Then I don't know what you're talking about, Courtney. If it's not yours, why does it worry you so much?" She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I left the cup on the table. I stood up. I looked her straight in the eyes. "Life turns around, Courtney, and sooner or later, everything one does comes back." And I walked out of the kitchen without waiting for an answer. That day I understood something important. Courtney wasn't fighting against me. She was fighting against her own past. A past she believed buried, but which I had just started to unearth with extreme care. The photo had only been the start. The mug, a reminder. This paper, a warning. But what would come next? What would come next would truly make her tremble. And I, for the first time in years, didn't feel fear. I felt purpose. Courtney didn't walk the same anymore. Before, she came down the stairs as if she were the owner of the house. Firm heels, sure steps, haughty gaze. Now she came down slowly, carefully, as if every step were a trap. Her eyes avoided mine, but every so often she forced herself to look at me, as if verifying if I knew more than I showed. And the truth was simple. Yes, I knew much more, but I didn't need to prove it. I just needed to keep watching. That morning, she placed her mug, the pink one with flowers, the same one she could no longer use without shaking, at the back of the shelf. She took a different one, a gray one she almost never used. And even so, before filling it with coffee, she peeked inside with a trembling hand. The simple act of having breakfast had become a destiny exam for her. I, sitting at the table, stirred my tea with a calm that seemed insulting. "Good morning," I said, without raising my voice. "Good morning," Courtney replied, barely audible. She sat across from me. The silence between us was no longer like before. Before, the silence hurt me. Now, it hurt her. A few minutes later, Richard came down hurriedly, checking his phone. He kissed Courtney on the forehead, but she gave a small flinch, as if her own husband were touching her with strangers' hands. He didn't notice anything, as always. "See you tonight," he told her. Yes, honey, Courtney whispered, without looking at him. When the door closed, Courtney remained motionless. I knew she was afraid, but what I didn't know was how fast that fear would grow. Past noon, Courtney started cleaning the living room frantically. She moved cushions, lifted tablecloths, checked drawers. It was as if she were looking for hidden microphones or invisible evidence. Every time I watched her, she reminded me of those wild animals that, when they feel cornered, start running in circles aimlessly. I went out to the back porch to hang clothes. The sun was soft, pleasant, and for an instant life seemed normal again. But then I heard a dry sound in the living room. A crash, followed by a small whimper. I went back and found Courtney on her knees, picking up a picture frame that had fallen. She was so nervous, she couldn't even hold a simple frame. She put it back in its place, and when she looked up, she saw me standing in the doorway. "Are you okay?" I asked. Courtney opened her lips, but didn't speak. She nodded slowly, as if afraid that any word might give her away. That gesture, that simple gesture, confirmed something important to me. Courtney didn't know how much I knew, and that lack of knowledge was her executioner. Mid-afternoon, she went up to her room and didn't come down for a good while. The silence became heavy. I sat on the sofa, opened an old notebook, and started writing. Writing was always my way of understanding the world. While I wrote, I heard hurried footsteps on the second floor. Courtney was pacing back and forth. At times, she broke down crying. At times, she talked to someone on the phone. What I knew with certainty was that she was starting to lose control. It was then, amidst my writing, that I remembered my years as a teacher. The children who caused the most trouble were always the ones who were most afraid, the ones who had something to hide. Courtney was exactly the same. The difference was that she was no longer a child, and I was no longer the defenseless woman she believed. "Everything comes back, Courtney," I whispered to myself. "Everything comes back." Now, before continuing, tell me here in the comments what you think of this story so far and what you would do in my place. Don't leave the video, because what comes next will give you goosebumps. Now, let's continue. Around 5 in the afternoon, Courtney finally came down. Her face was tense, but there was something else. Desperate determination. She walked towards me with the phone in her hand. "Vivian, I need to talk to you." I looked at her without moving. "Sure. What is it?" Courtney swallowed hard. She sat across from me and placed her phone on the table, like someone placing a weapon before a confession. "I know that you... Did you see something?" "Something like what?" I asked softly. "Don't play dumb," she snapped. "I know you saw my messages, that photo, those printouts. You are digging through my things." "And why would I be digging through your things?" "Because you want to hurt me," she shouted. I smiled, barely. A millimeter of a smile, enough for her to recoil in the chair. "Courtney, if you haven't done anything wrong, you have no reason to fear me." She opened her eyes as if I had slapped her, because those words were poison for someone with a dirty conscience. Courtney started to cry, an ugly, desperate, almost animal cry. I have problems, Vivian. You don't know everything I'm carrying." "I imagine," I replied, "but that doesn't justify the way you've treated me." She covered her face with her hands. "I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do." For an instant, I felt pity. Only an instant. Then I remembered the photo on Facebook. I remembered her laugh. I remembered how she called me a useless old hag. And the pity vanished. "Courtney," I said with the firmest voice I had, "whatever you are hiding will come to light, with or without me." She stopped crying. She looked at me, and her face turned pale as paper. because she understood that that wasn't a threat, it was a certainty. What? What do you know? Enough, I replied, and very soon I will know more. Courtney stood up trembling. She backed up a few steps, bumped into a chair, and without saying a word, ran up the stairs. That night, for the first time in years, I went to bed with a strange sensation. Not fear, not sadness. It was anticipation. The intuition that finally, after a lifetime of staying quiet, my voice was starting to wake up. And tomorrow would be the day Courtney discovered that you cannot humiliate someone who has already lost their fear with impunity. I didn't sleep well that night. Not from anguish, but from a sensation difficult to describe. I was about to see something that had been hiding in front of my eyes for years. Something that was always there, breathing under the rug of this house, waiting for the exact moment to show itself. And I felt that moment had arrived. At 6 a.m, I got up. Courtney hadn't come out of her room yet. Surely she hadn't slept. Her silence was too perfect, too heavy, like someone listening to every step you take, every move you make. I wasn't in a hurry. I knew today would be the day the truth found me. I made coffee, tidied the kitchen, opened the windows to let fresh air in. And I did it all with a soft calm, like someone setting a table before an important conversation. When I went up to the second floor to drop off clean laundry, I noticed something that shouldn't have been there. The door to Courtney's room was ajar. She never left her door open. Never. Not even when she came down for water during the night. I stood still in the doorway. Something felt different. A strange energy, as if the room had been abandoned in a rush. "Courtney?" I called, softly. There was no answer. I pushed the door a little. The room was empty, and on the desk, the laptop was open, on, with the screen lit up. It was as if the laptop was looking at me, waiting, inviting me. I walked slowly. Every step I took sounded too loud in the silence of the room. When I reached the desk, I didn't touch anything. I just observed. The screen showed an open conversation, not blocked, not minimized, as if someone had run out in the middle of a crisis. I sat down. I clasped my hands so they wouldn't shake. And I read. It was a chat. Not with a friend, not with a cousin, with a man. A man whose name I didn't know, and whose tone froze my blood. "I can't keep sending you money if you don't do what I asked. Richard can't find out. If he talks to his mother, I'm lost. The inheritance thing must be resolved now. Get her out of her house. Make her leave. If the old lady discovers the truth, we are dead." I felt a knot in my stomach. The conversation continued. Much more. Whole paragraphs. "You and I have too much invested in this. I already sold my share. You promised to get the money from the sale of the farm. Do it. I don't care how you manage it. But as long as that woman is there, Richard won't sign. I told you to push her. What would a harder shove cost?" My breath cut short. My hands turned to ice. The world went silent, as if someone had turned off the sound. There was more recent messages. "You are losing control. If Vivian suspects, it's over. We cannot allow witnesses. You said the photo would scare her, but in the end, the scared one was you. Do it today, or I will do it." I read the last sentence at least 5 times. Every time I read it, my heart gave a different beat, deeper. "Do it today, or I will do it." It was a threat, clear, direct, and Courtney was trapped. That's why she was crying. That's why she wasn't sleeping. That's why she was afraid of me. She wasn't just a bad daughter-in-law anymore. She wasn't just someone cruel. Courtney was an accomplice to something much bigger, something to do with my family farm, with my inheritance, with money I had never seen, and with my own life. I leaned back a little. I needed to breathe deep not to get dizzy. Then the door creaked behind me. I turned, and there was Courtney, standing in the frame, pale, red eyes, trembling breath. Her hand gripped the edge of the door as if she needed support not to faint. "No," she whispered. "No, no, Courtney," I said softly. "Since when?" She shook her head desperately. "It's not what you think. I I didn't let her get close. Not out of fear, but out of clarity. I looked directly at her, with calm, with strength. "Since when have you been planning to get rid of me?" she cried. She cried as if her soul was tearing apart. "I didn't want to," she sobbed. "He forced me. He threatened me. He said if I didn't do what he wanted, he would tell Richard everything." "Everything what?" I asked, though I was starting to suspect. Courtney pressed her lips together. She covered her face and murmured, "About the money? About the sale? What we did with the signature?" A cold stab went through my chest. Richard never knew. I never knew. But Courtney had betrayed everyone. I stood up from the chair. She took a step back. She was afraid. Real fear. "Vivian, please," she said with a broken voice. "Don't tell Richard. If he finds out, he'll kill me." I stared at her, and for the first time in my life, Courtney lowered her head before me, like a broken child, like someone who knew she had crossed a line of no return. "Courtney," I said slowly, "what I found here—" She looked at me with eyes full of tears. "Please, please don't say anything. It's only half the truth, and I'm going to find the other half." Courtney fell to her knees. Truly, she collapsed in front of me. "Vivian, I beg you. He's coming." "For what?" I asked. "To finish what he started." My blood froze, but my mind became clearer than ever. "Then," I said, turning to leave the room, "I better be ready." And I closed the door behind me. The afternoon fell with a strange silence, as if the whole town had decided to stop breathing. The air was thick, the sky loaded with dark clouds presaging a storm, and a cold draft entered through the windows even though I had closed them all. I walked through the house slowly, checking every corner without knowing exactly what I was looking for. Maybe tranquility, maybe answers, maybe a sign that I still had time. But every step confirmed what my intuition already knew. There was no turning back. Courtney didn't come out of her room all day, not to eat, not to drink water, not to pretend she was okay in front of Richard. I heard how she cried, how she talked to herself, how she dragged furniture trying to block the door. The fear was consuming her, not because of what I knew, but because of what he knew. That man, that stranger, that ghost moving between text messages and threats, had a power over her I had underestimated. And now he was coming here. Richard came home around 6 in the evening, tired, distracted, never imagining his marriage, his home, and his family were about to shatter like glass hid in silence. He greeted me with a kiss on the cheek. Something unusual for him. Maybe he sensed my distance. Maybe a trace of his childhood woke up, and he walked to the second floor. "Is Courtney upstairs?" "Yes," I replied. "She hasn't come down all day." He sighed. "I'm going to see what's wrong." I heard him knock and call her name several times, without success. After a few minutes, he came down frowning. "She won't open," he said. "Says she's tired." I nodded without saying a word, because I did know why she wouldn't open. In the kitchen, while washing a couple of dishes, I heard distant thunder. A storm was approaching. I stood looking out the window at the dark horizon, wondering if that same darkness was what had entered my house months ago without me noticing. Courtney's phone vibrated in her room, and although I was far away, I could imagine perfectly what it said. Today, one single word: cold, final, irrevocable. At 7, Richard went out to the supermarket, said he would buy something for dinner. Courtney didn't come out to say goodbye, and I knew immediately that had been a mistake. A grave mistake. The house was left empty. Empty of everything that could protect us. Empty of witnesses. Empty of innocence. I stayed in the living room, sitting on the sofa, hands clasped on my lap. I listened to every sound. The tick-tock of the clock, the creaking of the ceiling, the drops starting to hit the roof, and then I heard it, the sound of an engine, stopping in front of the house. My heart skipped a beat, not of fear, but of certainty. The moment had arrived. I got up slowly. No rush, no shaking. I approached the dining room window and pulled the curtain just a bit. I saw him, a tall man, wearing a dark jacket, getting out of a gray car. Hair messed up by the wind, aggressive attitude, fast steps. He looked at the house like someone recognizing enemy territory, and then he walked toward the door. Courtney screamed from upstairs, a dry scream, choked, full of fear. "Don't open! Vivian, don't open that door!" But it was too late. I had no intention of opening the door. I had the intention of being ready. The man banged hard, 3 times. "Courtney!" he shouted with a hoarse voice. "I know you're in there!" Courtney started crying. I stood motionless, listening. He banged again. "Open the door, damn it!" I took a step forward. The sound of the rain grew. The storm had arrived. I approached the door. I didn't open it. I just spoke from the other side, with a calm that surprised even me. "Courtney can't come down." There was a silence, a heavy, loaded silence. "Who are you?" the man asked. "The owner of this house?" I heard him take a step back. It was evident he didn't expect that. "Open up. I need to talk to her." "She doesn't want to talk to you," I replied firmly. "You have no idea what you're saying, old lady." I smiled. Old lady. Courtney's favorite word. Maybe even Richard's sometimes. But this time it didn't hurt. "I know exactly what I'm saying," I replied. "And I also know who you are." There was a brief silence. I imagined him stepping back, looking at the door, looking at his phone, remembering the messages Courtney didn't delete. "Who do you think you are getting involved in this?" he spat furiously. "The person you tried to erase from the equation," I said. And that was a mistake. I felt the tension from outside, a dense, dangerous tension, but I didn't move. "Courtney can't sign anything." "What did you say?" "She also can't sell my house." Silence. "Nor can she keep stealing money from my farm." Another silence. Longer, sharper. And then I heard him moving away from the door. Short steps, followed by a dull thud against the wood. I couldn't help it. I moved back a little. The man started checking the windows, touching the frames, circling the house. He was looking for an entry. Courtney screamed from upstairs. "Vivian, don't let him in! Don't let him!" I had no intention of doing so. I walked to the kitchen. I picked up the landline phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. My lawyer. The same one who handled my farm papers when my husband died. The one who told me to always keep copies of everything. "Vivian," he answered, surprised. "What's wrong?" "It's an emergency," I said. "I need you to come." "Now?" "It's raining torrentially." "Now? It's a matter of life or death." I hung up before he could ask more questions. I went back to the living room. The rain pounded the large windows. The man's shadows moved around the house like an impatient animal. And then something happened that froze my blood. The back door. The sound of the lock being forced. 1 blow, 2, 3. I ran. Not because I was afraid, but because I had to be there. The man managed to open the safety latch a bit, but I pushed the door with all my strength and slammed it shut again. Our hands were separated only by inches of wood. "Open up, you damn old hag!" he roared. "No!" I slid the deadbolt back, and this time I wedged a chair against the door. It wouldn't do much, but it would delay him a little. I ran upstairs. Courtney was huddled in the corner of her room, shaking like a lost child. Seeing me, she ran toward me. "Vivian! He's going to kill me! He's going to kill both of us!" I grabbed her by the shoulders. "Calm down. I can't! "Courtney," I said firmly, "look at me." She looked up, tears running down her cheeks. "What exactly did you do?" Courtney sobbed. I forged Richard's signature to sell part of the farm. He told me it was a quick deal, that we would make a lot of money, but it went wrong. The buyer threatened him. He forced me to pay him back, and You stole. She nodded. "How much is the debt?" "More than Richard could pay in his whole life." I took a deep breath, very deep. "Courtney," I said calmly, "listen well. He didn't come for you." She looked at me confused. "What do you mean, no? He came for me." "For you? Why?" "Because I am the owner of the house." She froze. "And while I live," I continued, "you can't sell anything." Courtney opened her mouth, but she said nothing, because she understood. He needed me to disappear, and Courtney too. Maybe not at the beginning, but now, yes. We stood in silence, a long, cruel, sticky silence, a silence that weighed more than the storm, and suddenly we heard a crash, this time louder. The back door had given way. The man had entered. "Run!" I told Courtney. "Where?" "Anywhere, but run." She didn't move. She was paralyzed. I pushed her toward her closet. "Get in there, and don't come out." I closed the door, without waiting for her. I went down the stairs alone. My heart hammered in my chest, but my steps were firm. They didn't shake. They didn't falter. I reached the bottom of the stairs. The man was in the kitchen, soaked, furious, breathing like a bull that just saw red. His eyes met mine. "You?" he said with a twisted smile. "Me," I replied. "You should have stayed quiet." "Too late." He advanced. I backed up slowly toward the living room, and then behind me, the front door opened. My lawyer, wet, breathing with difficulty. "Vivian, what?" The man turned around, but it was too late. My lawyer pulled out his phone and dialed. "Police," he said with a firm voice. "I have an armed intruder." The man stepped back. He looked for an exit, but he didn't have one. And for the first time since I saw him arrive, he was afraid. A fear I knew well, a fear I had felt for many years, a fear that now changed owners. The police took 7 minutes to arrive. To me, it felt like 7 years. But when they arrested him, when they handcuffed his hands, when he shouted that everything was Courtney's fault, and Courtney heard it from upstairs, I knew the nightmare was over. Or almost. Because something was missing. Something important. My lawyer turned to me. "Vivian," he said, "I need you to sign something." I nodded. I followed him to the dining room. He brought a folder, a thick one. He put it in front of me. "This is the document for the estate," he explained. "Someone tried to move it without your authorization." "I know," I replied. "Signing it today can save you everything." I took the pen. My hands didn't shake. I signed. I breathed. And for the first time in many weeks, I felt peace. A clean peace. Cold. Real. That night, Courtney came down. Her face was pale, devastated, destroyed. She knelt in front of me. "Vivian, I'm sorry." I looked at her, without hate, without pity, without affection. "Sorry isn't always enough," she cried. "Are you going to kick me out?" "No," I replied. She opened her eyes, surprised. "No? You are going to leave on your own." "When?" "Tomorrow." And Courtney knew she no longer had a home, nor a husband, nor an accomplice, nor power, only fear. Fear of the same silence she created. I went up the stairs. I went to bed. I closed my eyes. And for the first time in a long time, I slept deeply. Courtney spent the night awake. I knew it by the slight sound of her footsteps on the floor above, by the nervous creak of the hallway floorboard every time she walked to the bathroom, by the crying she tried to stifle so no one would hear her. But I didn't sleep thinking about her. I slept thinking about me, about how I had reached this age allowing so much, about how a cruel photograph, some humiliating comments, and years of silence had been enough to turn me into a shadow in my own house. But not anymore. Today, I woke up being someone else. At 7, I went down to the kitchen and made coffee with the usual quiet routine. But my mind was awake, sharp, ready. The house was silent. Too silent. As if it knew a definitive moment was coming. I looked at the empty table, the cold refrigerator, the soft morning light entering through the window, and I thought about Courtney's post, about that phrase that burned my heart. "Cheers to this old hag who only knows how to sleep and take pills." She wanted to humiliate me before everyone. She wanted to erase me, shut me off, turn me into a joke. But she didn't know that wounded people also learn to bite. And today I was going to bite. At 8, Courtney came down. She was carrying a small suitcase. Richard had left early for work without saying goodbye to her. They barely exchanged 2 words before he left. She hadn't just lost a house. She had lost her marriage, her security, her power. "Vivian," she said with a hoarse voice. "Good morning." I answered without looking at her. "I haven't slept. I can't eat." "It's normal. The truth is heavy," I replied, pouring coffee. She lowered her gaze, ashamed, broken. "Are you going to tell Richard everything?" she asked. "I don't have to tell him anything. He will know by himself." Courtney swallowed hard. She knew that with the arrest of the man from the messages, the police would start investigating, and when that happened, her whole web would break. She stayed in silence for a while, as if waiting for a miracle from me, as if she still believed I could save her. "Vivian," she whispered on the verge of tears, "forgive me." I didn't answer. The forgiveness isn't always a gift. Sometimes it's work the other person has to do alone. She left her glass of water on the table, took her suitcase, and headed to the door. But before leaving, she turned to me. "I don't know how we got to this." "I do," I replied. "How?" "Through cruelty. And cruelty always returns." Courtney left. The door closed behind her. A dry sound. A definitive sound. I took a deep breath. The air inside the house changed. It became cleaner, lighter, more mine. I spent the whole morning reviewing old documents. The lawyer arrived around 11 with more papers, among them the legal confirmation that I was the sole owner of the house and the absolute proprietor of the estate. No one, absolutely no one, could move an inch of my assets without my permission. It was my victory, one I had waited years for without knowing it. "Vivian," the lawyer said while reviewing the folder, "what they tried to do to you is serious, very serious. You'll have to testify in a few days." "I know." I nodded slowly. It didn't scare me, not after everything I had lived. When he left, the house fell silent again. I stayed standing in the living room, looking at the walls, the old portraits, the furniture I had bought with my late husband. Everything had a different shine, as if I had recovered the right to inhabit this space. Approaching the dining table, I saw something that made me stop. My phone, the one I almost never used, the one I barely knew how to operate. I smiled, and for the first time in my life, I opened Facebook without my grandson's help. I searched for Courtney's post. There it was, with more than 100 reactions. Many had laughed. Some had commented things even more hurtful than the phrase she had written herself. Women mocking, men making jokes. People I had known from afar without knowing they could be so cruel. I didn't delete the post. I didn't report it. I didn't hide. I did something better. I clicked on comment, and I wrote, slowly, word for word, like someone signing an important document. "Hello, everyone. I'm Vivian. I want to thank you for the comments you left my daughter-in-law. Thanks to them, I discovered who is here to hurt and who is here to support. I am fine, very fine. And for those who mocked, today I want to remind you of something. Age doesn't make you weak. It makes you dangerous, because it gives you the strength to survive things you can't even imagine. Life turns around, and the one who was humiliated yesterday, today, is the owner of the house. Good day to everyone." I reread the message. It was firm, elegant, true. I posted it, and I closed the app. A minute later, the notifications started. Private messages, surprised comments, people apologizing, friends I didn't know I had, and distant relatives sending words of affection. But none of that mattered as much as the sensation that invaded me after. Peace. A deep peace. Warm. Absolute. For the first time in years, I was the one who had the last word. I was the one who spoke. I was the one who said enough. I was the one who decided, not out of revenge, not out of resentment, but out of dignity, out of self-love, for that woman who lived silently for years, until today. Because today, finally, I went back to being Vivian. Sometimes life forces you to break into 1,000 pieces so you can put yourself back together in the correct shape. That happened to me. I, who for years let others speak for me, who swallowed tears so as not to inconvenience anyone, who accepted humiliations believing that avoided conflicts, discovered that the only person I was betraying was myself. I didn't recover my dignity in a single day. It wasn't a heroic act or a stroke of luck. It was a slow, painful, and necessary awakening. A moment in which I looked at my life and understood that I no longer wanted to keep being anyone's shadow. Today, I walk through my house without fear. I breathe deep. I look in the mirror and recognize the woman who was always there. The strong one, the brave one, the one who survived everything. I don't need applause. I don't need recognition. I only need my peace, and now I have it. And if you are listening to this, I want you to remember something. You are never too old to recover your voice. Before leaving, tell me in the comments what city you are watching this video from and what part of this story touched your heart the most. And don't forget to subscribe and leave.